and President Marisa Kelly, who I'll hand it over to in just a moment to introduce our very special guest. It is truly hard to believe that 23 is coming to a close. It's been an incredible, busy and successful year for the New England Council. I was just saying to someone, between I think the second quarter of 22 and today, we've done 103 in-person events in all 6 New England states and in Washington. And believe it or not, we're not done yet. We have one final event before the end of the year. On Monday morning, we'll be across the street. We'll host a farm at the UMass Club focused on the housing crisis in the New England region. And Senator Elizabeth Warren will deliver keynote remarks, followed by a panel discussion with some of the New England Council's members who have the expertise on this topic. And we already have our first 24 scheduled Capitol Hill gathering with House Minority Whip Catherine Clark on January 16. We have a few others, too. We'll be announcing them very, very shortly. But as always, you can find more detail and register for any of our council events on our website, newenglandcouncil.com. And today we're delighted to welcome back a great friend to the New England Council, longtime friend of mine, someone that got all his training from someone who has some affiliation here in the building, too. It was Joe Moakley, who was a graduate of the law school here. So, but to introduce him and to give a very formal introduction, obviously I'm not able to do that, but I know somebody who is, and that's the president of this great university here, President Kelly. So with that, many of you may not know, but she joined here, the University of 2014, as the Vice President of Academic Affairs and the Provost, and then she was named the President in March of 2018, I think after 20 months as the interim role. She, needless to say, has been an innovative leader, not only for this institution, but also for our region. She is somebody that many people in the business community seek out for advice and guidance. She plays an integral role in the fabric of this wonderful city of ours. Again, we're extremely grateful for the support that she and her team for hosting today's program and for our ongoing support at New England Council. With that, President Kelly.
Thank you, Jim, and good morning, everyone. Welcome to Suffolk University. It is really a privilege to be here with you today at another really incredible New England Council event. These are always such wonderful opportunities, and it's a special privilege to be able to introduce our guest today, Congressman Jim McGovern. Congressman McGovern, who began his career as a congressional staffer to the late Congressman Joe Moakley, as you've heard mentioned already, was first elected in 1996 and is currently serving his 14th term representing Massachusetts' 2nd Congressional District, which includes communities in central and western Massachusetts. Congressman McGovern has just been an incredible advocate for his constituents and an impactful congressional leader. He is the top Democrat on the powerful House Rules Committee, where he has worked to make Congress more open, more transparent, and importantly, bipartisan. He is also a senior member of the House Agriculture Committee, where he has been a global leader in the fight to end hunger. In addition, Congressman McGovern has been a champion for the protection of human rights across the globe, serving on the Congressional Executive Commission on China and the bipartisan Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission. And I am especially happy to underscore that Congressman McGovern has also been a longtime advocate for increased Pell Grant funding, which is so critical in the fight to expand access to higher education for students with significant financial need. an incredible advocate on these issues and so many others, and an impactful representative for his district and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So again, so proud to be a part of this event here this morning. I know we're all looking forward to hearing from Congressman McGovern, so please join me in welcoming him to the podium.
Well, first of all, let me thank President Kelly for the very generous introduction. I can hardly wait to hear what I'm going to say after that build-up, but I appreciate her leadership and have great memories and great regard for this school. You know, she mentioned I worked for Joe Moakley for many years, and I was here when they dedicated the law library to him. Ted Kennedy was there. I think David Sargent was the president at the time, and they were talking about Joe Moakley's career as a student at Suffolk Law School, as if he were like the Oliver Wendell Holmes of law school students. And Moakley got up and he said, well, you know, when I went to Suffolk Law School, I was also in the state legislature. So I had a full-time job. I was busy. So I didn't have time to go to class. So I spotted this woman, some of you may know Jean Hessian, who was in the audience, and I said, how would you like to be the first woman to be the president of a Suffolk University law class? She said, well, I don't know anybody. I'll take care of it, but I need something in return. If I make you president, you need to take notes for me, and I will use your notes so I can be able to pass the test. They agreed. She became the first president of a Suffolk Law School class, and he passed his classes and graduated from Suffolk Law. And when they dedicated the library to him, he said, the only two rooms at Suffolk that I never visited were the ladies' room and the library. But in any event, this is where Joe Moakley's papers are, and so I will always have a fond regard for this school. I want to thank the New England Council, Jim Brett and Larry Zabar, and everybody with New England Council for all that you do to bring us together to have these conversations, for the stuff that you do in Washington, for your advocacy on behalf of our economy here in not only Massachusetts, but New England. It's great to be with all of you and a lot of old friends here, and I'm really, really happy to be here. You know, I've been asked to give a little update about what's happening in Washington, and I think for that you really need an Irish coffee and not just a regular coffee, because it is kind of depressing, especially in the House of Representatives. You know, I flew up yesterday to do an event with Richie Neal in the western part of the state. The Western Massachusetts Food Bank just built a new building, has a new location. It really is quite extraordinary. And as many of you know, I spent a lot of time focused on the issue of how do we end hunger in our community and around the country and around the world. So I was looking forward to it. And so I flew into Hartford, and I'm exhausted. Not just because of the long hours, but I'm exhausted because of the long hours and not being able to point to a lot of accomplishment after some of those long hours. And so I get on the airplane and I just kind of close my eyes, and then we hit a bump and I open my eyes and there's a guy 3 rows up staring at me. I'm like, boy, do I know him? Anyway, then I close my eyes again, and then we're about to land. He kept on turning around looking at me, and I'm like, I must know this guy because he keeps on looking at me. Get off the plane in Hartford, and I'm walking through the airport, and he catches up to me, and he says, Mr. McGovern? I said, yeah. He says, you're doing an awful job in Congress. And I said, well, you know, why do you say that? He said, you know Joe Biden is guilty as hell, and you're fighting against an impeachment inquiry. Why are you doing that? I said, well, guilty as hell of doing what? What's the offense? He said, what are you talking about? I said, well, like in most whodunits, right? I mean, you know what the crime is, and then you try to figure out who did it, right? What is the crime that he committed? He says, you know he's guilty. I said, but of what? Of what? And then he turned to me and he said, you're a blank and blank and blank piece of whatever. And I was like, well, thank you for sharing. I'm going to put you down as undecided. It kind of summarizes one of the challenges we're faced with right now, not just in Washington, but in our country, and that is, our politics have become coarsened, and people don't seem to want to talk or listen to one another. And I really think it's important, even when we disagree, that we listen, and not get to this point where if we don't agree on everything 100%, then you're canceled. I have a district that has constituents that are far to the left and then far to the right and everything in between. I've been canceled by the left and the right and everybody in between. My wife was mad at me. I think she's canceling me too. But the bottom line is this is ridiculous. I mean, we have to be able to converse. We have to be able to talk. We have to be able to disagree. Before I worked for Joe Moakley, I was an intern for many years for George McGovern, no relation. I remember I used to see his schedule every day, and there were days where I would see drinks with Barry Goldwater. And I said to him one time, why are you having drinks with that warmonger Barry Goldwater? And McGovern said, well, Barry wants to quadruple the military budget, and I think he's kind of crazy for wanting to do that. He says, I want to cut the military budget. He thinks I'm crazy for doing that. But you don't have to agree on everything to agree on something. And, and beside that, he's a good guy. He enjoys a nice drink. He tells funny stories. I really like being with him. And so, you can't just shut people off because of a difference of opinion, whether it's small or whether it's big. I mean, the job of leadership, job of politics, and what true leadership is about persuading people, trying to bring people to your side. You don't do that when you yell and scream and cancel everybody. And that's what I was thinking about when that guy kind of unloaded on me. It's not the first time, but it's like, well, how do we get to this point? This was a guy in a business suit. Like, when did it all of a sudden become acceptable to kind of engage in that kind of discourse? And we got to figure out a way to change that. And that's not going to happen from Washington. It's going to happen more locally, where we're going to have to insist on a better discourse, on listening to one another. We went to this opening of this food bank, which was really an uplifting experience for me because, to me, it represents something real and something tangible. A state-of-the-art food bank that is not only going to provide people food, but it's going to be a place for people to register for benefits that they have, that they deserve, so they can put food on the table. They're going to have nutrition classes and cooking classes, and it's going to be a place that is not just about managing hunger, but about ending hunger. And so it was really good to be at something that was meaningful, that was going to make a difference in people's lives. And I think at the end of the day, we have to get back to governing in a way where at the end of it all, we have something to point to. It may not be everything I want or everything you want, but we have to be able to get to a point where Congress is a place where things get done. Right now, it's a place where trivial issues get debated passionately and important ones not at all. I mean, we are now off, at least in the House, supposedly till after the holidays. Haven't done anything on Ukraine, haven't done anything on Israel aid, haven't done anything on support for Taiwan, haven't done anything to avoid what might be a shutdown in January and February. Our economy is actually doing okay. It's getting better. Inflation's coming down, stock market's doing good. We're told that interest rates are going to go down. All this stuff is good as we go into the next year. Looks like we're going to avoid the recession that everybody thought was inevitable. All this stuff is good. The only thing that could screw it up is Congress. If you shut the government down, for a period of time, that's going to have a real negative impact on our economy's ability to recover. And we should be talking about that right now. I mean, we're not even having preliminary discussions amongst Republicans and Democrats in the House, never mind Republicans and Democrats in the House and the Senate, about what we're going to do to avoid a shutdown in January or February. So we're going to come back and, we're going to be right up against shutting down the government. And here's the challenge. The challenge is that we have some people in Congress who really stand for nothing. They can tell you everything they're against. They're against everything. Voting no is, comes naturally to them. But when you ask them what you're for, they can't tell you. A few years ago, I was part of a group to try to talk about, can we come to some sort of compromise on immigration reform? How do we fix this? I understood, I'm not going to get all that I want, but I also thought it was understood that people who think differently than me weren't going to get everything they want. So we had a couple of meetings back and forth and putting things on the table. Some things I was very uncomfortable with, but saying, okay, well, let's keep it going. And then I finally get to the point where I said, okay, consider somebody tell me, what is it that you would support? Show me a bill that you would support, and then maybe we can work backwards from there. And the response was, well, there really isn't one. I mean, what do you mean there's not one? He says, well, my base doesn't want me to support any kind of immigration bill that will allow anybody else in this country. I said, so what the hell are we here for? This is a waste of time. Again, politics is the art of give and take, and we have to get back to giving and taking to get to a result. Otherwise, it's a waste of time. So I mean, there's a lot of big problems that we need to deal with right now. And some of it's going to cost money, and some of it's not going to cost money. And by the way, not everything you spend necessarily means that you're adding to the deficit or the debt. You can spend in ways that are investments that will end up with a return that will actually lower government spending. I began by talking about my visit to the food bank. I'm working on I just introduced legislation yesterday on medically tailored meals. Basically saying, I said my friends from community servings are here somewhere anyway, but the bottom line is that our healthcare system, by and large, is divorced from nutrition and food. It doesn't make any sense to me, right? But it is. I got President Biden to do the second ever White House conference on food, nutrition, and health. And leading up to that conference, I remember I went to New York City. There was a pre-conference that Mayor Eric Adams of New York hosted at Gracie Mansion. I didn't know much about Mayor Adams. Truth be told, I was rooting for the other person he ran against to be mayor, but I didn't tell him that. But anyway, I went, and he told me his story, which is that he had diabetes so severely that his doctor basically said, you're going to lose your eyesight, and you're going to probably lose toes and fingers, and you got a kind of a lousy life ahead of you. And he said, what do I do? He said, take your medicine. He said, then I was with a group of different doctors, and they said, we think that a different diet and understanding the importance of nutrition and its effect on your disease can make a difference. Anyway, he's become a vegan. That's kind of gone from one extreme to the other. But the bottom line is he reversed his condition. And so did his mother. And he said, look, this is not only good for me personally, but it's going to save the system a boatload of money. Because if I lose my eyesight and if I have all these other complications, if I can't work, if I can't do this and that, you know what? I'm going to need you to help support me. Now, that's not going to be the case anymore. And the issue with medically tailored meals is that we know that a lot of times when people get dismissed from the hospital, they go home and they're so weak that they really can't cook. They can't go shopping. They don't always have a built-in infrastructure to help support them. One of the number one reasons why people get readmitted to the hospitals prematurely after they're left is lack of nutrition. If we can get Medicare, for example, to cover meals for people that are nutritionally appropriate for what they're dealing with for a short period of time till they get their strength back, it's not only good for the patient, it's going to save a boatload of money for the system. So we ought to be talking about how do we control healthcare costs through things like that rather than rationing or charging you more or cutting benefits or cutting services. There's a way to do this. Those are the discussions we ought to be having in Washington right now. Not impeachment inquiries, not censuring everybody that you disagree with, not reducing the Secretary of Homeland Security's salary to $1, I mean, all this kind of crazy stuff means nothing, And so as we approach the next election, I'm hoping that people are going to actually get serious about politics. And whether they vote for Democrats or Republicans, vote for people who actually want to get stuff done. I mean, that should be a bare minimum requirement. Get stuff done. And if they don't want to get stuff done, if they're just going to tell you what they're against, then please do not send them to Washington. Not just Republicans, but Democrats as well. I don't want to deal with people anymore who tell me what they're against but can't tell me what they're for. We need to get stuff done. And, to the credit of Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi, a lot of the reason why our economy is able to withstand COVID and why we're not in as bad a shape as a lot of our allies around the world is because we made investments and we did the right things so that we could withstand the shock of COVID. And so I'm hopeful that the future will be bright. The final thing I'm going to say, and then we'll open us up to talk about whatever you want to talk about, is this issue of democracy. I've been at a couple of events now where I've said, the fate of our democracy lies in the balance. And it's interesting because at one college campus I was at, I won't mention it, but at a couple of business events I've been at a couple of senior events I've been at, people have raised their hand and said, who cares? I just want someone to get the job done. And I was a history major in college, so it kind of stuns me when people say that, right? Like, who cares? It matters. It matters. And when you look throughout our history, our world history, you have seen countries that have been vibrant democracies slip into authoritarianism. And while it may seem attractive to some that you can make the trains run on time easier if you have a strong man in the Oval Office or as the leader, you also learn that all of a sudden it can turn on you. And we have example after example after an example. We don't have time to give everybody a history course. I wish more people had a sense of history, but we do have to remind people. That it matters. It matters, and I have to tell you that a lot of the checks and balances that are in place, really are precedent, are tradition, are that no one's ever gone there before. And I'm afraid that we have somebody who is not afraid to go there. And I'm afraid if he goes there, if he were to prevail, that we're not going to be able to come back. So on that happy note, let me open this up to whatever you want to talk about.
Right. Thank you. I remember hearing former Congressman George Santos say, in his 25 years of Congress, he's never seen such a partisan, nasty. Was it 25 years he served?
Yeah. I think it's 30.
I think 2 years.
Feels like 25.
Humor there. Can you talk a little bit about Ukraine? Obviously, you've adjourned until, I think, January 9th without any aid to Ukraine. Read the articles in the papers. Putin is happy because he thinks he's winning the war there, and he's just going to outweight them. And he's seeing the support dripping slowly down on Congress's appetite to help Ukraine. So going back, do you think there will be some relief at all for Ukraine?
I hope so. Look, you're looking at the biggest peacenik in the delegation. I mean, I don't like war, and I've fought against almost every war I can think of, and so my tendency is to fight. How do we avoid it, and how do we end them quickly? In the case of Ukraine, I mean, Vladimir Putin, was the aggressor. He decided that this was his opportunity to expand his empire, and so he launched this invasion. I was part of the first delegation that visited Zelensky in Ukraine right after the war began with then Speaker Pelosi, and we had a 3-hour meeting in Kiev with President Zelensky, where he told me not only about Russia's aggression, but the particular brutality of Russia's aggression, targeting civilians in a way that, by any measure, is unacceptable. And we also talked about that this is not the end of something, it's the beginning of something. If Putin takes over Ukraine and the world steps aside and says, that's okay, go ahead and do it, what's next? We met with the president of Poland the day after, and he was very worried about that they may be in the sights of Vladimir Putin. Look, Putin is a megalomaniac. This is a guy who wants to expand Russia's empire as much as possible, and he will stop at nothing to be able to do that. The question is the world going to say, no, you can't, enough. If you want to have a relationship with the rest of the world, you can't do this. And if you insist on doing it, we're going to help provide resources so that your Ukrainians can fight back. And there was, I think, there was great bipartisan support for that. All of a sudden, and I don't know whether it's because Joe Biden is championing this, but all of a sudden, Republicans say they don't want to do this. I mean, Putin is telling us what the deal is. When U.S. aid stops, they will go in, and they will be able to go in easily. And I'm just telling you, I think that is a very dangerous thing to have happen, and I think that is a signal that this aggression will continue in other places around the world. So, look, if you don't want U.S. troops involved in future wars, if you don't want to have to expend more and more of our treasury on supporting efforts to stop Putin, this is the moment. This is the moment. I think if the Speaker of the House were to bring it to the floor, it would pass. It would pass. But he's not bringing it to the floor because there's a small group of particularly loudmouth, right-wing Freedom Caucus people who are saying to the Speaker, we changed the rules so that any one of us can vote to oust you. And so if you don't do what we say, you're going to suffer the same fate as Kevin McCarthy. And add to that, the former president is not a big fan of Ukraine, and for whatever reason seems to be infatuated with Putin. He's also stirring the pot on this. So this is it. We're running out of time. We got to do this within the next few weeks. If not, it's going to be too late.
And what about aid to Israel?
So aid to Israel is tied up in this package as well, and as is humanitarian assistance to the Palestinians. So they're all tied together, and Republicans are insisting that we put in border security in this package. It's interesting because Speaker Johnson was a big advocate of a measure that said that the House should only bring single-issue bills to the floor. In other words, don't bring omnibus bills with 1,000 different things in it. Don't bring bills with 2 different subject matters. Bring bills one subject at a time. And now he's saying, oh, let's add border security. Well, we could talk about border security. Let's reinforce our southern border. I think we could get an agreement on that. Let's also put more money to adjudicate pending asylum claims right now to help people to decide who gets it and who doesn't. And whoever gets it, let's get their work permits issued so the state doesn't have to have the responsibility of providing for their well-being. They can actually go to work. And by the way, and I think I've talked to some people in this room, you name the vocation, people are looking for workers. As a Cape Cod, people are looking for workers in the hospitality industry. I talked to somebody who owns a slew of nursing homes saying, we can't find anybody to respond to our ads for employment. And yet some of these migrants who are here have nursing degrees. Some of them could easily fit into any of the areas where there's a need for jobs. Let's just do that. So all of this is all kind of, is all up in the air. And again, we're waiting to see what the Senate's going to do. If the Senate comes to some sort of compromise, then the pressure increases on the House to take it up. But there is no guarantee that even if the Senate agrees on something, that the Speaker of the House will schedule it. And so that's kind of where we are.
The House Republicans voted this past week to begin the inquiry into impeachment of the president. Where do you see that going?
I think I think they're going to bring impeachment resolution to the floor at some point. I mean, look, we met on this for one reason alone, and that is Donald Trump ordered them to do this. I mean, I've talked to a number of my Republican colleagues. They roll their eyes. They're like, this is embarrassing. Why are we doing this? It's because Trump wants this done. Trump, I was joking before with this guy about what's the offense. No one can tell me what the offense is, but it's beside the point. I think Trump wants Biden impeached so he can say everybody gets impeached. You know, it's no big deal. You know, I had to, the impeachment inquiry came through my committee, the Rules Committee, so I had to argue against it. But I said, you know, if you want to know what an impeachable offense is, and I held up a sign, a picture of what happened on January 6th. You know, it's when this guy, the President of the United States, orders a violent mob to attack the United States Capitol with the sole purpose of stopping Congress from doing its constitutional duty of certifying the Electoral College, to overturn, basically, a free and fair election. I mean, that's the smoking gun. It's clear. And it really stuns me that I have colleagues that continue to downplay what happened that day. Some of you may know, I mean, I was the last person off the House floor that day. Speaker Pelosi was in the chair, and she motioned to me to take over briefly so she could take a call outside the chamber, and she didn't know, but they whisked her away. She left her phone there. And so I had to evacuate everybody from the House floor. And when I walked into the Speaker's lobby off the House floor, there were doors that are glass from midway up so you can see out. I mean, there was this angry mob of people, unhinged, swearing and screaming and using their fists to break the glass. They broke the glass. As we're trying to get members out the back door to a safe location, that is when they lifted this woman, Ashley Babbitt, through the window, and she was shot and killed, and then they dispersed. But I have no doubt that if they got at any of us, I mean, you know, people would have died. They were manic. They were manic. That's how their faces looked. But they were there because they believed that the President of the United States won this election, notwithstanding the fact that he lost by 8 million votes, that he wanted them there to stop this. You know, so this is not a minor thing. It wasn't a political thing. This was an atrocity, what happened that day. So again, I think that's the goal. I don't know whether they have the votes to get an impeachment resolution approved, but that's the purpose of all of this. The purpose is to help Trump and to hurt Biden in the next election.
Some of your colleagues referred to the January 6th as uninvited tourists coming into the building.
Yeah.
January 20th is going to be a big day. You're going to have to make a vote. The continued resolution ends that day. How do you think it's going to play out? Do you think we'll have a shutdown? Do you think the Republicans will say, we need a continuing resolution maybe to go forward, but we need Democrats? Do you think the Speaker's going to say that? Or?
Well, we avoided the shutdown last time because Democrats voted to avoid a shutdown. I mean, you know, and the bill that was, the continuing resolution that was passed was not as robust as I would have liked it. But, you know, shutting the government down was not an option. Now, some of the Freedom Caucus people are upset about it because they want deeper cuts. And here's the problem. I don't know about you, but whether it's in business or politics, if we have a conversation and we make a deal and we shake on it, it's a deal. A deal is a deal. And you shouldn't expect me to renege on it, and I won't expect you to renege on it either. And the Republicans and Democrats had a budget deal with Biden. We had the numbers established. That's the deal. Now they want to go back on it. That's not the way things work. You know, we are happy to support something that is not as robust. I won't say happy, but we will support something not as robust as we would like because we don't want the country's economy to go in the wrong direction. We will do that, right? That's the grown-up thing, the adult thing to do. But the issue is whether or not the speaker will actually schedule it. When you're in charge, you get to schedule things or not schedule things. So if he didn't schedule something, we can't vote for it. Now, we could try to use a discharge petition to force a vote, but that would require some Republicans to join with us. There's no evidence at all that moderate Republicans even exist anymore. If they do, they're afraid to be moderate Republicans right now. So it's unclear. But shutting the government down is a stupid, bad idea, especially when the economy is moving in the right direction. I mean, why would you do anything to try to mess things up at this particular point? And again, when the chairman of the Fed gave his remark, I mean, I think we're looking toward next year actually lowering interest rates. I mean, all this stuff is going in the right direction. Let's keep it going in the right direction.
Questions for the congressman? Marjorie, Aaron's, Barron. First question.
You talked about how there was a deliberative process under Speaker Pelosi and working with Joe Biden, and policies were debated and things were accomplished. You were chairman of the Rules Committee, and you were a key player in all of that. Could you describe what it's like now with a Republican in charge of the Rules Committee? Are there any rules followed?
Yeah. So when I was in charge of the Rules Committee, basically we tried to live up to the notion of being a deliberative body. I would meet with Republicans and try to figure out how can we, what do you need? How do we, I'm not going to make messaging gotcha amendments in order, but substantive amendments that are serious, let's talk about it. And we tried to do that. And she gave us great latitude to figure everything out. Sometimes she'd call me and say, what's wrong with you? Why'd you do that? What planet do you live on? I can't believe you did that. But she said, you live with it, right? So we were able to do that. But we tried to be a Rules Committee that was accommodating to the extent that we could be. And there was a lot of give and take, tons of amendments made in order. I mean, I thought we ran the place fairly. I really do. And I'm not just saying that because I was chair. Fast forward to today, it is a very different place. I mean, there's not any accommodation for Democrats. And even with this very restrictive process that's in place, Republicans are losing their own rules because sometimes they're not as extreme as the extreme right wing wants it, so they'll vote against the rules and they bring the rules down. That that didn't happen, right? I mean, you don't lose the majority never loses the rule. It means that you can't consider anything, and they're losing it. More rules lost, I think, in a single year than ever, so it is less. I mean, Tom Cole, who's the chairman, is a great man. I love him. He's not given the latitude to be Tom Cole. And they also put some Freedom Caucus people on the Rules Committee. We don't have one thing about the Rules Committee is there are not a lot of rules. I mean, there's other committees you have time limits and how long you can speak. Rules we don't. By tradition, you can speak as long as you want. So we have people from the Freedom Caucus who go on for an hour at a time on whatever they want to talk about, and so it's a very, very different committee, less collegial, notwithstanding Chairman Cole, who I think is a good man, and if he could run this place the way he wanted to, I think the Congress would be run better.
Other questions for the congressman? Becca Gould.
What's your, Congressman, I guess there's just a 2-seat majority now. What's your outlook for after the election?
So I'm hopeful that Democrats are going to regain the House. There was a court decision in New York that I think bodes well for us to pick up some more seats in New York. I think we're going to win the special election, George Santos's old seat. And by the way, if you don't know what to do for Christmas, you can call George Santos, and for like $700, he will record a video for you that you can send to whoever you want to, send to. He's made more money since leaving Congress than he did in his time in Congress, which says something really scary about our culture, that people want to pay him to do that. But I think we're in good shape. I mean, I think we'll win the House back. The Senate's going to be tough, but I think Senator Schumer seems to think that they're in decent shape. And then it all comes down to what happens in the White House. And I don't know whether to believe the polls or not, but it's tight. And again, we'll have to see as we get closer. But I feel really confident that we can win back the House, and I think that would be a good thing for the country. Not just because Democrats will be in charge, but we have to get back to a place where important issues are being talked about, and we're actually moving things forward, and getting things done. It doesn't mean you have to get everything. I was talking earlier before about cancel culture, and you have these meetings sometimes with people who agree with you 99.9% of the stuff. That 0.1% you're not in agreement on, never vote for you again. Nope, you're done. I'm like, well, I'm not perfect. Maybe I was perfect before I ran for Congress, but I've served now for since 1996. I've voted. I'm not so perfect anymore. But the bottom line is, really, I mean, we're in this, and that's one of the things the new Speaker of the House is realizing too. He's got a group of people that are expecting total loyalty, blind loyalty to whatever they want, and if they don't get everything, they vote against the rules or they threaten to throw them out. Kevin McCarthy made a huge mistake when he changed the rule to make it easier to oust the Speaker. 15 votes. He finally agreed to this one person rule that allows any one person to move to oust the Speaker. He said, how about 10? No. How about 5? No. How about 4? No. 1. And so that's what we're dealing with. I thought the new Speaker would come in and say, we need to change that for the good of the institution. This can't be like this one person can hold everybody hostage. He hasn't. And it needs to be changed. We need to function no matter who's in charge. We need to be able to operate in a way where we do the right thing, not always what is politically correct for the most extreme wing of our party.
So when the Democrats, if they take back the House, they will change that rule?
Well, I'm writing the rules package if we take over, and the answer is yes, because this is crazy. This is nuts, what we're doing right now.
Did you have your hand up?
Hey, thank you for talking with us today. Really appreciate it. I share your frustration about the lack of things being accomplished. Do you think it's an issue with the voters making wrong decisions, or is it more of a culture or an environment issue in the process?
I was talking to Marjorie about this earlier. One of the things that I've noticed is that, when I first got elected in 1996, you had a finite number of places to get your news from. You had a small amount of news networks. You had, our newspapers were much more relevant in our daily lives. And now you got a million places to get your news. And everybody's getting news online and from TikTok and from you name the source. It doesn't matter. No one's verifying facts or fiction, right? It's all coming at you from all different ways. And so we're not all getting the same facts. And that's problematic, I think, because, if you're not operating off the same set of facts, we're all over the place. Some of the stuff that's online, is just propaganda, is just blatantly false. And you can manipulate videos, in a way that it looks real, but it's not. And people are using those to justify their positions. And so I don't know. I'm trying to figure, how do you put the genie back in the bottle? How do we get people to start at least reading the same set of facts? You can come to different conclusions on how you act, right? But at least we all have to understand what the facts are. And but I think that is, to me, a real problem. People come to see me in my office, and they show me these videos. And I'm like, where did they come from? Well, I don't know, but it's true. I'll just give you one example. So as mentioned, I was the last person on the House floor on January 6th. So I came back to Worcester that weekend and went to the grocery store. It was COVID. We were still wearing masks. And a guy, maybe in his 60s, in a business suit, was coming down the aisle, and he says, "Is that you, McGovern?" I was like, "Yeah, how you doing?" He said, "Oh, it was terrible what happened the other day." And I thought he was being sympathetic. I said, "Yeah, it really was. It was really, really sad." He says, "To think we almost got fooled." And I said, "Excuse me?" He said, "Yeah, a friend sent me a link." I said, "A link to what?" He says, it showed what the government, with the insiders in the government who don't like Trump, fed the news media. And then it showed actual footage of what happened at the Capitol. And I said, "Well, what was the actual footage that happened at the Capitol?" He said, "Nothing. It was calm." I said, "But I was there." He said, "No, you got to look at the link." I said, "No, but I was there. I was there." I said, "We get on an airplane right now, and I'll take you to the Capitol. It's in shambles. You go right now." He goes, "No, but you got to see this link." And I was like, I don't know what to tell you. I said, "But I mean, that's crazy." He said, "Well, I'll investigate." I said, you do that." I went up to my wife. I said, like, how the hell did he get like that? Like, I mean, seriously, that we can't even agree that what happened? I mean, it was, I mean, on TV, but he got some link from somebody that said it was a conspiracy theory, and he bought into it. And we have to, how do you combat that? I think some of it is, education, right? We have to teach our young people to be critical thinkers and to try to establish what the facts are. We have to get them that way. But for the older people that are getting into this, we got to find a way to combat that, because so much of what I hear on airplanes, on trains, from people who want to unload, it is not based on fact. Not based on fact. Someone sent me a video of the Army-Navy game, which they claimed that the audience was standing up in unison, shouting expletives at Joe Biden. And it looked real. It looked like, I'm like, oh my God, how did this happen, right? And then my friend sent me Twitter or X, whatever we call it now. Actually, there was a disclaimer on it saying, this video is patently false or whatever. There was but the bottom line is, people are sending this out to everybody. It's just made up, and I think that's a real threat to our democratic institutions and our system here. I mean, we can disagree on policy. We shouldn't be able to. We should all agree on fact. I mean, this is a folder. It is not a Cadillac, right? So because if I say this is a Cadillac, that doesn't mean it is. And yet you got 30% of the people that will disagree with me and argue over whether this is a folder or a Cadillac. It's crazy, right? And I've got colleagues who have found that by engaging in conspiracy theories, they can raise a lot of money. They can get a lot of Twitter followers. They can get a lot of hits on social media. They could become well known by, again, engaging in conspiracy theories. And, you ain't seen nothing yet as to what's going to come in the next few months. And so, part of the challenge with Ukraine and part of the challenge with a lot of these issues right now is we're battling falsehoods. And we've got to get back to reality. Yeah.
Maybe that'll be the final question. Are you is it somebody? Jimmy Barron.
Following up on this, Jim. Following up on this, where are you and your colleagues regarding banning TikTok?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm not. banning, I don't even, my daughter would disown me, I think, if I did. But I think the issue isn't, if you ban something, it'll reappear as something else. I mean, I really think we have to find ways to, again, I wish we could strengthen our news organizations. You know, I wish we could, I worry that our newspapers some of them are going out of existence. It's a very dangerous thing. I mean, you know, my local papers, you know, I mean, I get them mostly for the obituary page, quite frankly, but, you know, I mean, they don't have enough reporters anymore. You know, everything's on a wire service, and, you know, they're getting smaller and smaller and smaller. It's a very bad trend in this country. And we need to figure out a way to, you know, to change that. But again, I mean, I think there's a responsibility for our educational institutions, and then we need to figure out how we get to the people who are buying into this stuff, who are, by the way, in the business world, and, you know, some of them are in academia, I mean, everywhere, right? I mean, I've got cousins who tell me things that they saw online that, you know, I'm just tired of it. The only thing I'm not looking forward to for Christmas with my family is having to explain to some of my relatives, like, why all the stuff that they're showing me is not true. So, but it is a challenge, and it is a threat to our democracy, and again, but I appreciate this opportunity to be here. I appreciate the New England Council, appreciate all you do for our business community, but also for our community in general. And again, I tell you, do a lot of work on anti-hunger efforts. I know a lot of people in this room are part of efforts here in Boston and all across the state to end hunger, and that's one thing we can do. That's something that's achievable, and I hope soon we get to that day. So thank you very much.
Just want to thank the